Dante's Inferno, Canto 22. I have erewhile seen horsemen moving camp, begin the storming and their muster make, and sometimes starting off for their escape. Vaunt couriers have I seen upon your land. O Aretines and forgers, go forth, tournaments stricken, and the joustings run, sometimes with trumpets and sometimes with bells, with kettle drums and signals of the castles, and with our own, and with outlandish things. But never yet with bagpipes so uncouth did I see horsemen move, nor infantry, nor ship by any sign of land or star. We went upon our way with the 10 demons, savage company, but in the church with saints, and in the tavern with gluttons. For upon the pitch was my intent to see the whole condition of that Bolgia, and of the people who therein were burned. Even as the dolphins, when they make a sign to mariners by arching of the back, that they should counsel take to save their vessel. Thus, sometimes to alleviate his pain, one of the sinners would display his back, and in less time conceal it than it lightens. As on the brink of water in a ditch, the frogs stand only with their muzzles out, so that they hide their feet and other bulk. So upon every side the sinners stood. But ever as Barbaricia near them came, thus underneath the boiling they withdrew. I saw, and still my heart doth shudder at it, one waiting thus, even as it comes to pass, one frog remains, and down another dives. And Gratiacan, who most confronted him, grappled him by his tresses, smeared with pitch, and drew him up so that he seemed an otter. I knew before the names of all of them. So had I noted them when they were chosen, and when they called each other, listened how. O Rubicantes, see that thou do lay thy claws upon him, so that thou mayest flay him, cried all together the accursed ones. And I, my master, see to it if thou canst, that thou mayest know who is the luckless wight thus come into his adversary's hands. Near to the side of him my leader drew, asked of him whence he was, and he replied, I in the kingdom of Navarra was born. My mother placed me servant to a lord, for she had borne me to a ribald knave, destroyer of himself and of his things. Then I domestic was of good King Thibault. I set me there to practice barratry, for which I pay the reckoning in this heat. And of Curiato, from whose mouth projected on either side a tusk as in a boar, caused him to feel how one of them could rip. Among malicious cats the mouse had come, but Barbaricia clasped him in his arms and said, Stand ye aside while I unfork him. And to my master he turned round his head. Ask him again, he said, if thou more wish to know from him, before someone destroy him. The Nade, the guide. Now tell then of the other culprits. Knowest thou anyone who is a Latzian under the pitch? And he, I separated lately from one who was a neighbor to it. Would that I were still covered up with him, for I should fear not either cloak nor hook. And Libiacoco, we have borne too much. With his grapnel seized him by the arm, so that by rending he tore off a tendon. Ik the Dragianaza wished to pounce upon him down at the legs, whence their Decurion turned round and round about with evil look. When they again somewhat were pacified of him, who was looking at his wound, demanded my conductor without stay, Who was that one from whom a luckless parting thou sayest thou hast made to come ashore? And he replied, It was the Friar Gomita, he of Golora, a vessel of all fraud, who had the enemies of his lord in his hand, and dealt so with them each exults thereat. Money he took and let them smoothly off, as he says. And in other offices a barrator he was, not mean, but sovereign. For gathers with him one Don Michael Zanche of Lagodoro, and of Sardinia to gossip never do their tongues feel tired. Ah me! See that one, how he grinds his teeth. Still further would I speak, but am afraid lest he to scratch my itch be making ready. And the Grand Provost turned to Farfalla, who rolled his eyes about as if to strike, said, Stand aside there, thou malicious bird. If you desire either to see or hear, the terror-stricken recommenced the Heron. Tuscans or Lombards, I will make them come. But let the male branch cease a little, so that these may not the revenges fear, and I sitting down in this very place. For one that I am will make 7 come, when I shall whistle, as our custom is to do whenever one of us comes out. Cognazo at these words his muzzle lifted, shaking his head, and said, Just hear the trick which he has thought of, down to throw himself. Whence he, whose snares in great abundance had responded, I by far too cunning am, when I procure for mine a greater sadness. Alachan held not in, but running counter unto the rest, said to him, If thou dive, I will not follow thee upon the gallop, but I will beat my wings above the pitch, the height be left, and be the bank a shield to see if thou alone dost counter avail us. O thou who readest, thou shalt hear new sport. Each to the other side his eyes averted. He first who most reluctant was to do it. Then Avares selected well his time, planted his feet on land, and in a moment lit and released himself from their design. Whereat each one was suddenly stung with shame, but he most who was cause of the defeat, therefore he moved and cried, Thou art o'ertaken. A little it availed, for wings could not outstrip the fear. The other one went under, and flying upward he his breast directed. Not otherwise, the duck upon a sudden dives under, when the falcon is approaching, and upward he returneth cross and weary. Infuriate at the mockery, Cacabrina, flying behind him, followed close, desirous the other should escape to have a quarrel. And when the barrator had disappeared, he turned his talons upon his companion, and grappled with him right above the moat. But sooth the other was a doughty Sparhawk to clapper-claw him well, and both of them fell in the middle of the boiling pond. A sudden intercessor was the heat, but nevertheless of rising there was not to such degree they had their wings belimed. Lamenting with the others, Babaricia made 4 of them fly to the other side with all their gaffs, and very speedily this side and that they to their posts descended. They stretched their hooks towards the pitch ensnared, who were already baked within the crust. And in this manner busied did we leave them. So in this canto, we move from embezzlers, grafters, to barrators. So in the last canto, again, remember, we're in fraud for all of these bulges. And so it's always doing something to someone else for your own gain. It's your greater gain for their loss. So in the last, it was the greater gain of money at the loss of others' money, taking their money from them. Here, it's just the very nature of bartering, period. It's exchanging something for another. And we see people, monks, friars, who have exchanged sides or let people go for money or for gain. They're constantly making deals. And so that's what Dante is getting at here, is that the condemnation of making deals, and that in an even more insidious way than money and sex, that bartering is even more base and so even more damning in the end. There's no remorse on the part of the barterer. And so you see this with the man from Navarre. Here he is, as Dante and all are walking alongside the demons. They're seeing all the different people stuck in the pitch, in the tar, occasionally poking their heads above the surface like frogs. Dante very much objectifying these sinners at this point, that their entire identity for the rest of eternity is known by their sin. And occasionally they all poke their heads below the surface before a demon can catch them, except this one, the man from Navarre. And so he makes a deal. The very thing that got him here in hell, he makes a deal. I can go and get 7 more. I can surrender 7 of my fellow condemned to you if you will let me go. So again, he's willing to condemn others further, submit others to further pain, just to save his own neck. And sure enough, they believe him long enough that he gets away. So I think what Dante is trying to tell us in this canto is not to feel remorse for the damned, to remember that It's not one sin that damns us. Well, it is if it's a mortal sin, but even the mortal sins come from patterns usually. So these people have these sins inherently in their hearts. They're habits, you could call them. Just like virtue is a habit, sin is a habit. And so they got themselves here. It wasn't one barter, it was multiple bartering. It doesn't say that they bartered, they call them barters or barters. It is something that they perpetually, habitually do. The other interesting note before I leave this canto are the demons themselves. You notice that they got tricked by this. And so, at least my assumption, having read Dante so far with the Divine Comedy, is that the demons almost have this infallible quality, all powerful. And this canto reminds us that they're not, that they're here too. They were damned to hell for eternity well before man. And so they're infallible here. They can be tricked in their pride and their self-interest. And so we're going to see in, further along, I forget which canto, but that even the demons have their specific places in hell. So maybe there's a reason why these particular demons are with the barterers, especially since that they can be duped by them.